Hello students, welcome to the second session. In this second session we are going to discuss the features of Java programming. In the first session I have told you the brief history of Java programming. In this session I will be discussing the features of Java programming. So already we have discussed the basic history of Java programming. So Java programming was first developed under the organization called as Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems was the organization under which the language called as Oak was developed, and it was later modified as Java. Okay, so that is we have seen in the history. Now coming for features of Java programming. So before going for features of Java programming, so Java is considered as object oriented programming language. So in this object oriented programming language, so we have certain features that is not available in the previous programming languages like say your C programming language. In that first feature is like simple. So why Java programming language is called as simple? Because if you consider the programming language that you have already learnt is C programming, in that programming we will have the concept of pointers as well as we have the concept of memory allocation, which is nothing but dynamic memory allocation. So dynamic memory allocation is nothing but the program is going to allocate the memory, and programmer will have the ability to deallocate the memory. Similarly, we have the concept of pointers, where a variable will be storing the address of another variable. This concept of pointer will create some problems if the pointer which I am pointing to is deleted. Suppose say if I write something like integer a and I will write integer hashtag b. Now a is an ordinary variable and b is a pointer variable. Now this b I am going to assign this to a. What is the meaning of this? The b pointer variable will be pointing to the variable a. So that is the address of a will be stored into the pointer variable b. So in this case, suppose if I use the function called as free and if I write the variable name a, so what this statement will do? This statement will deallocate the memory which is allocated for a. So as you know, integer will take how many bytes? 2 bytes of memory. So that is nothing but when a variable is declared, we are going to allocate 2 bytes of memory, and when I am using free of a, that memory will be released. So if you consider b is still declared, in the sense b is having still it is consuming how many bytes? 2 bytes, but it is pointing to a variable which is not available. So in the case once we deallocate, so these kind of problems will arise if you are using C programming language. Okay, to avoid that we will come across Java programming. In Java programming there is no concept of pointers. So pointers is not there in Java programming, and instead of having the concept called as dynamic memory allocation, Java will have something called as garbage collection. What is garbage collection? Garbage collection is a feature that is built onto Java programming or Java compiler, which is used to free or deallocate the memory which is not used. So what is the use of this? Say for example, if I am declaring a variable, say I have a function called as main. In that main function I will use some variables like integer a comma b. Okay. Now again similarly I will write one more function called as void add. In this function again I am going to define some variable like c. Now suppose I started executing this add function. Now once I have started executing this add function, after completing this add function, so execution of this add function, whatever memory that is allocated for C will be removed automatically, since the memory will be deallocated automatically once the completion of that particular function. So that is whichever object or whichever variable is out of its scope, As you know, this is a local variable that will be used only within add function. I cannot use C here because the C is available only for add function. Now, so that kind of data or that particular kind of objects will be deallocated. The deallocation is done by a feature called as garbage collection. So what is the use of that? That will save the memory. So if you are doing a larger programs or larger projects, we need larger amount of memory. So since we have the concept of garbage collection, so that memory will be saved, so that we'll have larger amount of memory for doing further functions. So why Java is called as simple? Because first reason, it does not have any pointers. Second reason, we have a concept called as garbage collection. Other than that, so we have one more language in between, like say for example, first if you consider C was later developed as C++ and later will come across the language called as Java programming. Now C is structured programming, C++ is not exactly purely object oriented, it is partially object oriented programming language, whereas Java is completely object oriented programming language. So whenever I consider object oriented programming language, so I will discuss this concept called as object oriented. What is object oriented? So object oriented is, we are going to divide the main problem into sub modules. So that is nothing but we are going to concentrate more on modules, as well as we are going to provide security for the data. Security for the data is provided in object oriented programming language. It is we are going to create a program in terms of modules which will help in reusability, of the code. So what does that mean in the sense, if I write a function called as, say I'll write void add function, in this function I'll have the instructions to add 2 integers. Now I'll make this as an object again. So I'll discuss how to create objects and other things in the coming classes. Just understand, this is an object. Now I want to create 2 more programs. One is like standard calculator, other is like scientific calculator. So I need to create 2 programs or 2 applications. One is standard calculator, other one is scientific calculator. Now both the functions will have this function called as add. In standard calculator also will have the addition function, and in scientific calculator also will have addition function. So now this object can be reused by both these functions, both these classes or both these programs. Standard calculator as well as scientific calculator can use this function or object which is already been created. That is done with the help of object oriented programs feature, which is like creating a modules, or it is helping in the feature called as reusability. Now, so that is about object oriented programming language. In this concept, when you are using reusability, so there are 3 basic features of object oriented programming language. What are those? Is like encapsulation. I told you object oriented programming will be providing security for the data. So how it is going to provide the security for the data is, it is going to combine the data and the number functions together. That feature is called as what? Encapsulation. In the sense, suppose we have a concept of global variables in C programming language. Once you create a global variable, that particular global variable can be accessed anywhere in the program. So as you know, if I just create a variable called as integer a, this particular variable, suppose I have main function as well as one more function which is add. So this is what we are going to do in C programming. So like we have a global variable, we'll have main function, we'll have add function or some other function. Now this variable a is accessible in main function as well as it is accessible in add function. So that is, we are not going to provide security for this data. So this variable can be changed by main function or it also be changed by add function. We are not going to provide security for it. Now in object oriented programming, what is going to happen is, if this function is changing that particular variable, we are going to group them together into one particular object. Okay, so that is done, that feature is called as encapsulation, where grouping of data members and member functions together is called as object oriented programming language. What is the use of this? This is going to provide security for the data. How you are going to do that? That is done by using a feature called as class. So you know, C programming, we have already studied structures as well as unions. Similarly, we will have classes that I will discuss in the coming sections. Now coming back to the next important feature of object oriented programming language, it is inheritance. So what is inheritance? Inheritance is a feature where the property of one object can be used by other object multiple times, which is nothing but it is going to implement what? Reusability. So once a feature has been developed, that can be used again and again multiple times. So once an object is created, that can be used multiple times, which is nothing but inheritance. So this feature is also available in C++. Okay, so that is about these two features, encapsulation as well as inheritance. Other than that, we will also have dynamic binding, as well as other feature called as polymorphism. Okay, so these are the main features of object oriented programming language: encapsulation, inheritance. Inheritance, you can take the same example as I told you, add and scientific calculator, both will be having the same function like addition. So that can be used by both the programs. Again, dynamic binding. What is dynamic binding is, so for example, if you are doing addition, like say I'll use the same operator, plus operator will be used for adding an integer number, a floating point number, as well as it can be used for concatenating two strings. So that is nothing but the same operator will be used for multiple things. Similarly, if you write a function, that function can be used for multiple things based on the values you are sending. Okay, if you are having the integer values, you will be adding only the decimal part. If you are having floating point value, you will be adding the integer part as well as the fractional part, both will be adding. So that is nothing but dynamic binding, that we will discuss in the coming sections. Okay, and finally polymorphism is also similar to that of dynamic binding, but poly is nothing but more than one form or many forms. So any particular function which is able to take multiple types, or example, you can say the same example as plus itself. This operator can be used for adding integer numbers or adding floating point numbers. So that is, one operator will be acting as many types. Similarly, one function name can be used for many doing many functions. That is polymorphism. So that is object oriented programming language. Again, next we will discuss one more topic, which is architectural neutral as well as platform independent. For these two topics, first I am going to explain like what is that we are going to do in C programming. When you consider C programming, if you write any program like program1.c, so we will first do what? So this actual program is called as source. Okay, now this source is actual program you have written. That program, once you compile, it is going to generate object code. So this object code will be in which language? It will be in machine level language, whereas source program will be in high level language. These things you know, like when you write a program, we will be using English language, which will be acting as source program. So we are going to save it as program1.c. Again, when you compile it, when you are going to compile it, you are going to use Alt plus F9 for compiling the program. Again, to execute the program, we will be using Control plus F9 for executing the program. So that is nothing but when you use Alt plus F9, it is going to check for any errors. If there is no error, we are going to use Control F9. Once I use Control F9, the high level language will be converted into machine level language or object code with the help of the compiler. Okay, this is what that will be happening in C programming language. When you consider Java program what will have is, like if I have the same program 1.java, this program the same thing, it is source and it is high level language. Again, once you compile this program, you are not going to get the object code, we will get something called as bytecode. Okay, so this code is intermediate code. So this is intermediate language, like it is not in high level language or not in machine level language. This language can be converted into machine level language later. Okay, now once you compile, you are going to get bytecode. After compiling, you will have something called as interpreter. Interpreter will generate object code, which will be in the form of machine level language. So first you are going to have the Java program, which will be in the form of source code, that is nothing but high level language. Next, once you compile the program, you are going to have bytecode. So that bytecode is an intermediate language, and once you interpret that particular language, that particular bytecode, you are going to generate object code. This object code will be in the form of machine level language. Now for this we will be using Java C. Java C is a class that will be used for compiling the program. Again, Java is a class that will be used for executing the program. Just don't consider what is class. Class is nothing but some set of files. So that files will be used for generating bytecode, and the same way Java will be used for executing the program. So in short, we can consider it as API, which is nothing but application program interface. Okay, now in this case, C program is not like say platform independent. If you can see, I have the feature called as platform independent in Java, but in C program it is platform dependent. Why? Because if I write a program in one system, that system will convert or generate a machine level language that is dependent only on that particular system. Say for example, I have a computer which is a 32-bit computer. If I execute the program here, if I execute the C program here, it is going to generate machine level language which will be used only in that particular 32-bit system. Now the same thing if I do in Java, what will happen? The same Java program, if I try to execute in this 32-bit system, it is going to first have the program, and instead of directly generating machine level language, it is going to generate what? Bytecode. This bytecode will be platform independent, in the sense this bytecode, what file you have, this file can be executed in 32-bit system, or it can also be executed in 64-bit system, or it can also be executed in Windows, Macintosh or Linux, or many kind of platforms. You are going to execute that particular file if you have this bytecode. I don't want the source code, I only need what? I need the bytecode. With the help of bytecode, I can execute anywhere in any system where you have Java compiler. Okay, so after interpreter, it is going to generate machine level language. So that is nothing but architecture neutral as well as platform independent. Architecture neutral, as I told you, different architectures, 32-bit architecture, 64-bit architecture, and any different kind of architecture which is architecture neutral. Java is called as architecture neutral because of bytecode. This bytecode can be executed on different types of architectures. Similarly, Java is also called as platform independent because it can be executed on different platforms like Windows, Linux or Mac. So that is why it is called as platform independent. And Java is robust language. Why it is robust is, this language will have inbuilt features where it is going to provide security. It is going to provide security for the data, as well as it is a virus free environment is provided for all the kind of programs that you are going to create in Java. That is why we will consider these are the basic features of Java programming. So hope this is clear. In the next session I am going to discuss next features. Thank you.